Okay, all right. Well, hi everyone out there in internet land. This is Sean. I'm going to be putting this on Sean Barker's Hodgepodge on YouTube, and we're going to write a Substack about it. This is April. She's waving, and then we are going to put this on two platforms. So it'll be on the Hodgepodge, and it'll be on uh, Global Patriot Mission Coaching on Rumble. So we're basically sort of going to talk about an activist topic today, but this is my partner in crime, April Williams. She's a Hawaiian goddess. She lives, what island do you live on currently?
I live on Oahu currently, and I
Okay.
want to clarify, I am not Native Hawaiian, but my son is, and it is my kuleana or responsibility to keep things pono or righteous and balanced for my child. And, aloha is a way of life. Aloha is a being, a living state. So,
Ex-
aloha, everybody.
Excellent. Yes, thank you for that. And so we just wanted to sort of get in this gig and have a little bit of a chit chat about what actually is happening in Maui currently, what has happened, what continues to happen, and maybe talk about some meaning behind it. And also, I would like to expand out the conversation to talk about colonization and escalations in colonization and resistance to colonization. I think we should just start with the just the facts, ma'am. So from your perspective, being a Hawaiian, having greater access than the rest of us do to the immediate circumstances of Lahaina and Maui, what do you perceive to be happening? What have you concluded?
That the United States government and their supposed efforts to help might actually be ways to launder money. My, their people are suffering. They are still in need, and it's not the government, especially the United States government, who's claiming that they're a state and that they have all these rights. That they're not actually helping them on the ground. We have people here next to them, or because we're an island next to them, we're actually boating over, helicoptering over resources to help them. And FEMA agents, as well as I don't think it's the military, but they're stopping people from actually delivering food to people who need it. They're stopping multiple containers, over 60 containers, which, if you haven't seen a container, they are gigantic.
Right.
Containers are
Shipping
gigantic.
containers.
Yeah, over 60 shipping containers have been sent, and they are not with the people. They have not been helping the people.
Well,
So,
it appeared to me from footage that it was FEMA and actually Hawaiian police that were
yes, yeah, that's true. The
that
Hawaiian Police
that were
Department, that is
stopping it.
kind of right, right, and that's not local people. And
Right.
police, they don't want to be doing it. You can tell they don't want to be doing it, but they're being ordered to stop, regulating to stop allowing people into the area, which is, I understand, based on one person's recount that's a local boy that's going through to find and collect remains of people. There's
Mhm.
like heavy metals, there's melted, all kinds of toxic stuff. So, of course, you want to limit people to the area, but people still want to go through Lahaina, which is like, it's a major road. It's one of the few accesses to get around the island, because
Mhm.
on an island it's different. There aren't multiple ways to get to a place. You can go in one direction on one road. There might be a back road if you're lucky, and that back road is typically one car in length, or
Mhm.
in width, excuse me, in width, and
Right.
so you can't really get through. So that's what's
Mhm.
happening right now actively.
Mhm. Well, yeah, okay, great. And yeah, I've seen some footage to that effect that it's just like totally inexcusable what's happening and how that's being frustrated to prevent the humanitarian aid that the people, you mentioned the aloha being and the aloha way of life, through that spirit of aloha, neighbors are trying to help neighbors in this time of crisis. And then
Right.
you have these neo-colonialists that are standing in the way because they have other intentions with that land supposedly. And then let's back up a little bit and talk about what actually happened, how we got here, what the crisis actually was. Because immediately after it happened, you had Blue Anon types saying, oh, this is just climate change. And then you had QAnon types saying it's direct energy weapons. And then I've sort of seen some more convincing evidence that it was actually kind of like what we might call a deliberate happenstance, but that it probably wasn't a directed energy weapon. It was rather
I'm
um,
sorry. You're gonna have to repeat that. That kind of got cut out. It got really choppy. So
okay. Okay, yeah, I just said my internet connection's unstable. Maybe I'm saying things I shouldn't be saying. But well, I was saying we heard different theories as to how the fires happened to begin with. So we heard
mhm.
about some people were just reflexively calling it climate change. It was, government types, authority types that were calling it climate change. And then some people, conspiracy theorists were saying it was a directed energy weapon. But the most convincing theory that I've seen so far is that it was actually the storm created the storm knocked down power lines that created the fire, and there was some mishandling of the situation because the trees had not been trimmed in quite some time, and the power was not cut off despite the windstorm when that would have been a standard practice. And then furthermore, the water was cut off to Lahaina so that they couldn't even put the fires out. And then these same police figures were trying to prevent people from getting out of Lahaina when the crisis was happening.
So I've definitely saw the recount of a local homeless person, or they're houseless by choice, but they retail like hats and woven hats and different things like that in Lahaina. They were walking out. There was a
Mhm.
police officer standing guard, stopping people from exiting Lahaina. So the people that were told you can't leave on foot, you have to leave in your car, were shunted into their cars into this row. And as you can see, there's nothing around it, right? When you look at any of the footage, the drone footage from what's left over, they weren't allowed to leave that area. So those families and those people were more or less sacrificed by someone who's saying they were doing their job. In terms of the starting of the fire, um, there's now a power company from stateside. Now, I don't call it the mainland because if you know about the sovereignty movement here in Hawaii, it was an illegal occupation. They put the queen at gunpoint and told her, "We'll kill your people if you don't sign these." Saying that you're willing to ratify and become a state, whereas every other country, France, England, they all recognized the Kingdom of Hawaii as a kingdom, as its
Mhm.
own nation. So, um, so they had the stateside company said that they had these cameras that were watching different transformers, and they're claiming to have seen in that camera, and I have not seen the footage directly, that a power line fell into a transformer and causing sparks and exploded, which then had hot metal flying off, as well as a fire that started the brush. Now, in terms of there being so many brush and the trims not being trimmed, this is all long-term effects of a land grab and um, water with restrictions and withholding. So certain companies came in and I don't remember the name of the company, but it is actually one primary company who came and decided we're going to take this and we're going to divert all the waters because Lahaina used to be a wetland. So what happens after a wetland is a shit ton of brush, especially if you've got 100 years under your belt, more or less.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of brush, a lot of dry areas, and even the people in Lahaina were forced to ration water, whereas this company didn't have to ration water. They could water golf courses, they could help resorts and hotels and do whatever it is that was in their interest. I also heard about the person who had the ability to turn on extra waters for Lahaina because there's multiple fires happening at the same time. There's one in Kula, there's one in Lahaina. So the ones in
Mhm.
Kula have been they were being fought. So most of the resources were towards Kula, but then Lahaina had kind of just been left behind, I guess you could say.
Hmm.
And it was definitely after um, someone could have turned the water on, but they did not.
Hmm. Well, it's yes, and that's it was, and I heard the bit as well that especially given the high winds, it would have been actually standard safety practice to turn off the electricity. Where
At a certain point, the electricity was off,
okay,
um, uh, but I can't tell you any details on that specific.
okay, okay, and yeah, and then yeah, so it does. I mean, this has the makings of let's say it's as though some interest put the dominoes into effect to allow for this thing to happen is what it kind of seems like because the intention is to the intention seems to have been disaster capitalism whereby this thing happens. You know, there's an insult to injury aspect to it as well because Lahaina is where the historic Hawaiian royals continue to live. It was the historic seat of governance of the Kingdom of Hawaii, and so it seems that there is, you know, it's on the spectrum of this was some sort of a plan to remove people forcibly to take the land, and or it became this perfect storm of opportunism whereby the powers that be seized upon it. And it would even seem that they put people in place because there was that gentleman who saw the aftermath of the Las Vegas shooting back in 2017, who was now the chief police officer that's handling this situation. So it makes you wonder exactly sort of what would your assessment be? How deliberate was this?
It's complicated to speculate on um, this particular topic because it's so emotionally charging.
Yeah.
And I myself am not about big government or any of that extremely corrupt system because the system itself has been corrupted. What I do know is that every person in the island has said we're not selling our land. Every person in the island has said because they had all been offered various amounts of money to relocate so that they can rebuild. Um, so it wa- my child woke up. It stirs the blood. It stirs the blood, especially the Hawaiian blood, that this is happening. And the major tragedy of it is all the children were off from school, and they
Right.
were, and now they're not saying that they're not talking about those remains. They're not talking about those children,
Right.
and that's the legacy of a lot of people. And so even the cultural center, there's a huge Hawaiian cultural center there that was also burned to the ground. And some of the scientific things, like patterns people are talking about in terms of wildfire, things don't add up in Lahaina.
Right.
So in terms of these governmental grabs, it's highly possible. But how we get that corroborating evidence and have it all together. What I can say is recently in the sky here, we've been able to see a trail of like 20 to 24 little dots in the sky
Hmm.
roaming around like a satellite snake.
Right.
And that wasn't there before. And then all of a sudden there's a fire on multiple, like there's always fires on Big Island, very
Hmm.
small containable ones. The ones in Maui got out of hand, and then suddenly there was one on Oahu, even close by my home, and it was just like, okay, what's the deal with all of these? And they're claiming they're controlled burns. Where I'm originally from California, I understand controlled burns.
Right.
I get ag burns, I get forest burns for preventing and so on, but controlled burns here on Oahu don't make sense.
Right.
So I'm thinking there's a lot of stuff that don't fully add up, and I think a lot of this information needs to be declassified now, not in 75 years from now, because
Right.
there's a lot of things that we need to correct in the system, especially if so many lives were lost and they're mostly children. And so
Right.
I was reading about how bones that are not calcified, meaning a non-adult bone, right? Because I don't remember what age the bones calcify, but it's far above the age range of the children that were at home.
Right.
And so it's even harder to find their remains. So you can't have 1,300 people missing. I'd say there's only 114 dead.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question because I hadn't been keeping track. The last time I heard an official figure, that official figure was 30, and that was just patently ridiculous because we knew that at least 1,200 people were missing. And now you're saying so the number of people missing is 1,300, and 114 is the official death count according to the government. That's what you were saying, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So speaking of the future, here's the future. And so yeah, or you speak.
Yeah, I muted. He can't see, but he
Okay.
could just hear me. Hmm.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, and so yeah, so we're yeah, it would seem that, and that would just add to some of these things are just too coincidental to be a coincidence, you know. So like all these things happen to where this very unnatural and very convenient for billionaires uh, burnout of Lahaina happens, right? So all these factors conspire, and then somehow we also had the children in their homes in many cases without their parents because their parents were working because school was off that day somehow. And then no one's allowed to leave. So it's sort of like if you want to do a land grab, you would want to kill off that next generation as well, so that there wouldn't be like a legal trust situation where this land can't be sold until they come of age and make the decision for themselves. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you want to
It's
get,
really, it's heartbreaking.
yeah.
It's heartbreaking.
Well, and I would say maybe this is a male thing, but I would say infuriating, you know, and
I
because
think it's, I think you have, for as a mother, right? You have
right,
to let your sorrow pass, and it goes back and forth between rage and sorrow.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then you know, for me, not all men are like this, but for me, it goes the whole rage has to burn out first, and then I can feel some sorrow. So,
Well,
um,
it's like I got to get that sorrow so I can like then shoot through my tears, because then it's vengeance time. It's then
yes,
recoup time. And
yes,
somebody, it's not even about somebody paying for this. It's about us coming together to actually instate change, because this can never happen again. Especially, I mean, just how people and water rights around the world and what people are doing in exploiting and controlling water, which is one of our free resources that our planet just has. And
right.
and the people who are hoarding it are typically terrible stewards of it, treat it terribly, poison it. It's ridiculous.
Right. Yeah, of course. Yes. And you know, this is a, you know, what maybe we should impress upon people is that this is the just the latest and perhaps the most egregious and a long history of abuses to the Kingdom of Hawaii and to the Hawaiian people. And so let's sort of focus on the well, I want to well, I don't know what order we should do it in, but I want to talk about the billionaire land grab, you know, people like Oprah Winfrey coming in and saying, you know, I'll make a big donation when we decide what we're going to do to help rebuild Lahaina. And so who's the we, you know, because she's not a Hawaiian. And
There's
she's
actually a huge movement here happening where the native Hawaiians have come together and said, "You have to talk to us about this. This is not happening, and you're
right,
giving time for us to grieve.
right,
This is a huge tragedy. You're giving us time for us to grieve before we decide how we're going to rebuild Lahaina, and it's going to be less, not more,
mm-hmm.
of the tech and tech, what is
Techno,
it, and the industrial, that's not even a word, but
yeah,
it could be.
the technocratic industrialization. Yeah, absolutely.
Right, right. Because part of the major foundations of Lahaina was keeping and preserving the Hawaiian culture and the traditional ways, because
Right,
that's where you get a lot of that medicine that helps and heal people. People assume that, oh, it's just location that makes something. It's actually the breath of the the people as well, and the culture that builds the power and the mana or energy of a space. And
Absolutely.
so Native Hawaiians are at the forefront of, here we are, you are not rebuilding, you will have to answer or you will be removed. And so
Right.
they've talked to the governor. I don't even know how the governor we have right now, Governor Green, I have no idea how he became the governor, especially after he was sitting there saying all these negative things towards the people. I had this one where this woman was saying, oh, things are going great, send positive vibes. Great, yes, send positivity. However, don't be naive in your positivity. This is not a positive to the point of disacknowledging the horrific things that have happened and the corruption. But so you don't even know if the money you're donating is getting to the people. And
Right.
word on the ground is, unless you're donating directly to families, it's most likely not getting there. There's some
That's right.
random businesses that are collecting money. There's Hiko who's collecting money. It's like, you had the money. You had the money to help this place in the first place.
Right.
And keep, water. It's just a shit show, to be honest with you. And
Exactly. Yeah.
it's the dissolution of the ideas. And now that we have social media, because they have this whole campaign saying, don't listen to social media, it's all just misleading. And it's like, no, you're actively misleading people and telling them it that they should do XYZ when it's counterintuitive to our human survival.
Right.
So
It's well, and that's his part, just connecting it to the governance style of neo-fascism. The world has been in a neo-fascist governance style since 2015, at least here in the West. It may have started in 2014 in some other places, but we're talking about like structured, weaponized, systematized, and scaled, mass scaled narcissistic abuse. And so this is just one example among thousands of examples of institutional gaslighting. And institutional gaslighting, when it's this level of life and death, it inspires an intense desire for retribution. What's his name? Was it Josh Green? What's his first name? I forget.
yes, that's it. Mm-hmm.
Josh Green. Yeah. First of all, I'm sick of him. And secondly, it's that these people are obviously stealing elections. There's been a systemic election theft apparatus throughout the entire United States since 1988, when we supposedly elected the first CIA chief president, George H.W. Bush. Yeah, right. Okay. Cool story, bro. But it's like we have you know these people who are he's a colonial governor. He's an elected governor in the same way that the 13 colonies had colonial governors under British rule back at the beginning of the European colonization of this land, of the American country. And so, what is the size and the scale of the sovereignty movement in Hawaii? What percentage of the people, the actual people of Hawaii, want there to be a return to sovereignty of the Kingdom of Hawaii?
Now, I would say that there are very few people that do not want it.
Okay.
But because you have one foot in the industrial complex, right? For
Right.
that anchoring of survival, right? It's an
Right.
anchoring, which is it's an illusion of anchoring. But a majority
Yes.
of Hawaiians are like, yes, we love our native land, we love um our traditions, we like our mana, but at the same time, we've been, and I can say that it's mirrored in the African American community. They've been
Hmm.
broken down emotionally and through periods of time. However, the spirit is strong. It's the last place that still has the true sovereignty um, of its its indigeneity, right?
Yeah, it's cultural inheritance. It's like one of the last great bastions of that pre-diluvian cultural knowledge, really.
So they're just kind of like waiting for, or some people are waiting, some people are like actively shifting, but I've never heard any native Hawaiian say that they don't want the Kingdom of Hawaii to be the Kingdom of Hawaii. You know, nobody's like, yay, America, unless you're like a veteran and you've been through some things and then you've kind of been programmed in the sense to say, go United States, but it's still like, go United States,
Yeah.
And I don't mean to make light of it, but it's laughable to say that the United States has been a benefit to Hawaii at all,
Right.
especially the way that they've taken lands, the way that they've segregated people, the way that they've over imprisoned Native Hawaiians.
Hmm.
Um, and so the true indigenous people who want to stand up for their land, a majority of them have systematically been removed from their power, similar to African Americans
Right.
um, and indigenous on the main continental United States. So they've just been systematically devalued and programmed to get in survival mode versus fighting mode. But here in Hawaii, if you're looking at King Kamehameha and his way of taking all over all the islands except for Waianae, right? Because the Waianae coast folks, they have a fire in them and they have a constitutional strength
Hmm.
that it's just beautiful because
That's
that's what it's reawakening in it and others.
right. Yeah, so it sounds like that last holdout from the original kingdom that weren't able to be conquered way back then might bring back some of that energy that's necessary to stand up to the neo-colonial powers today, and
Absolutely.
to these
They've got a whole
technocratic.
military. They've got a whole Hawaiian military. They've got a whole, sovereign. The sovereignty movement isn't a movement. It's here. The
Yes.
whole Iho'eia is here. People standing for returning to their ways is here. Military occupation, it's more like they're just holding up space and using a way to filter money and destroy lands. I now live near a military base and they're doing active fire shootings and stuff like that. This place is small. They completely destroyed Ko'oholave, with which is one of the islands, with nuke testing and different bomb testings. And there were so many native birds and plants. And there's a whole restoration movement. They can no longer bomb. They killed off so many fish, and it's just crazy what the United States is claiming they're doing when it's really just been how can we confuse our own people
Hmm.
and get away with as much stuff without them knowing as possible
Right.
when it's that time is over. That time is over.
And is there a plan of action, like an appeal? Is there going to be in the near future a declaration of sovereignty, appeals to the United Nations or to other countries? Sometimes people build their sovereignty one country at a time. Like they get it recognized through trade agreements. One country at a time. When are we going to see something bubble up to the surface in the global stage about the Hawexit, the Hawaiian secession from American hegemony.
Um, that is it feels eminent. It feels an eminent because several of these have been brought up. They've actually been brought to Congress, and it's a matter of the United States slowly dismantling or allowing without violence and life loss their hold on the properties, their hold on land. They're just land grabbing. And the whole thing is Britain has recognized the Kingdom of Hawaii. France has recognized, Spain has recognized. They all tried to get here and they realized this is a people that knows how to take care of its people.
Right.
This is a land that understands how to actually work with the land and balance the land. It's the United States and the coup that happened in 1893
Mm-hmm.
that shook this place because they threatened to kill the king, the Makainana, that is the people. So the queen was, I think she was it's 2 to 5 years. I don't remember exactly, so please forgive me for those of you who do know the full Hawaiian history of what happened in 1893. But they even had an ahupua'a system, or a system for the regions of land, and how to actually keep water allocated, keep things fresh, keep things growing and abundant for all the people. And this island of Oahu, like the meeting place, it had over 1 million Hawaiians without
Mhm.
anyone else being here,
Right.
because they understood how to work with the system and these natural resources. It's the United States that came in and overthrew that. And so it's going to be the people of the United States, they're going to have to say, okay, this shit's not cool, right? We
So,
actually have to stand for others,
so
not
we
just
need.
being in a state of survival. We just need to say, okay, I'll let this go. Like, go through your house. This is the metaphor. Go through your house. There's certain things that you know you don't need, that you're just holding on to.
Right. So
You,
we need a Hawaiian sovereignty movement here on the mainland. That's what it sounds like you're saying.
it's more like an indigenous people sovereignty movement. Period. Just give the
Period.
land back to the people,
Right.
because it's not that Hawaii wants only Hawaiians here, right? They're not
Right.
they're not anti other people. They're just, let the land be for the people and use it properly.
Right.
Unless they're in a state of survival, then they're classic hungry, American style. Okay, I'll just consume. I won't pay attention. I'll just treat my body badly. I'll do all these other things. It's the same thing that happens. Or they get lost in like alcoholism or drug abuse or something. That's across the board. That's everyone. That's every culture, right? Because
Right.
there's such a gap financially between the rich and the poor, and for whatever reason, the structures have been set up so that you cannot not be on the financial system.
Hmm.
And so once we really start integrating our own power, growing food, taking care of each other, having that community, it comes naturally here. It's
Right.
absolutely natural here.
Right, right, and it would happen very quickly in Hawaii. Like if the thumb were removed from it, it would not even take a full generation for it to be back to the system that was in place before, because so many people remember it, and so many people, no one was alive in 1893, but so many the culture has continued to thrive and to survive, and it continues to be passed down. It's right there, ready to
And
go.
exactly. And just because we no longer have, because in Lahaina, there was a lot of physical material memorabilia and things like that that were passed down that were just burnt, right?
Right.
Um, and so, there's a lot here in the museum and so on and so forth, but the mentality remains the same. So
Yeah.
when the plan has been made, certain people know, I'm not a plan maker, but I am a hole digger, right? So we're going to
Hmm.
plant these trees. I am a plant propagator. Okay, we're going to do this. Oh, I make food and we're going to feed the kids. It's not a question of how do we do it. It's a question of, okay, who's going to set the plan?
Right.
Because we realize that here, the elite, which are the higher ups, right? It wasn't, I'm better than you, like the European style. It was
Hmm.
more like, how can I best serve you?
Right.
Right? What would help you the most? Okay, well, let's get this ahupua set up so you can live your life contently. You can be a weaver, you can make your art, you can make your music as you wish. But we all spend some time in the lo'i. We all spend some time in the field doing a little bit, getting connected with our land, connected with the food, which is our original ancestor is the land. And that's part of it, is the foundation of colonialism has separated the human from spirit and the human from the land. They want to conquer the land versus flowing with the land. And that is what the major cancer has been. And
Hmm.
that's why we're inevitably, the human species is killing itself off, because it's not in harmony with its own mother, its own foundation.
Hmm. Well, with this incident in Lahaina, it sounds like the majority sentiment is that we are blaming this colonial system for this. Does that sound fair?
Absolute, that's 150% correct. It's not,
And
it's more than just, oh, there was a fire and it's their fault. No, it's a systemic issue.
right, and it's a systemic issue and a pattern. It's a pattern. There's this is not the first time colonialists have used weaponized fire campaigns to steal land. You know, anywhere, and even in Hawaii. And it sounds like, what do you think has this Lahaina incident galvanized sufficient energy that's going to topple it over to where this might be, historians might look back at this and see this was the point at which the Hawaiian people decided to stand up and take their sovereignty back?
You know, as much as I want to say this is that moment for Hawaiians, I think this is that moment globally. And
Right.
with the creation of social media, and we still have the ability to communicate with each other, unlike other countries, we have not. Well, that's incorrect. Let me backtrack. We have been completely brainwashed and sequestered and edited for global concerns.
Right.
However, this is our gateway because they use Hawaii so much as a filtration spot to bring the illusion of paradise, right? That's why this place comes and gets exploited. Come, take your ideas that you already have that aren't sustainable where you're at and bring them here, right?
Right.
So we're finally, everybody's looking and saying, oh shit, nobody's helping. Oh shit, the systems that we think are doing something are not, because we have the ability. They tried to cut the power. They're trying to limit all this stuff so that people don't have the strength. They're in survival instead of communicating. But what happens here is we communicate to say, these are our needs. This is what's happening. And this is the first time people are being able to see, oh, FEMA's not doing anything. Wait a minute. If FEMA's not doing anything in this disaster, how many people haven't actually been helped? How
Mm-hmm.
many people, and different times that we filter in all this money into this organization and they didn't really do anything?
Mm-hmm.
Or wait, they're actually preventing people from getting the resources that they need.
Right.
And
Criminally.
so now people are actually thinking
Yes.
that, and so it's making people uncomfortable and they're trying to click away. But because everybody loves Hawaii so much, it gets keep pumped to the forefront. And we're going beyond the very, like, what's the word, the very shaped, like, limited media, right? We're not just taking in news, we're taking
Mm-hmm.
in social media, which is real people
Mm-hmm.
communicating about what's happening on the ground.
Right.
And people
Right.
are trying to say, don't listen to social media, but it's like, that's the only way you can talk to people directly
Yeah.
and say, what's happening? We need to know for real. So I cannot be disillusioned. Santa isn't real. It was mom the whole time, right? Oh, FEMA isn't actually helping. They're holding back resources from people who desperately need them.
Right. Right. And what does in a more narrow scope sense, what does justice look like for the victims of Lahaina?
Global change, people thinking about it, realizing that everything is important. Some people sit there and don't take the time to hear their kids and listen to the legacies they're creating. They just go out and act like their actions and don't have ramifications.
Mm-hmm.
And in reality, everything has a consequence, has a something that happens afterward. And what we do now matters. And
Yes.
it's not every little thing. You don't have to pick apart your whole life. But you do get to pick apart, who am I believing in? Who am I listening to? What am I saying? Am I just parroting something that is being told to me to make me feel better? Or am I actually saying, okay, these are the truths of this, and so we can change this system?
Right. Yeah. And what do you think it looks like in terms of, at some point they've got to stop, they have to come off of these fake numbers and admit the real death numbers. What does that process look like? And when's it gonna happen?
You know, they're really saying, don't look behind the curtain, Wizard of Oz style, for however long, boat and pony show. We're gonna see if they try to pretend
Mm-hmm.
that it isn't happening,
Right.
or there might be another catastrophic event to try to think people are going to take their eyes off of this. But what they don't understand is that there are spiritual implications. A lot of people. Okay, so you said, what's justice? Um, in reality, there is no justice. Um, what does it look like? It looks like us changing.
Right.
Similar to what happened with the the indigenous schools where they kidnapped the kids and they did all these horrible things. There's no real justice for those children.
Hmm.
There's no real justice for the life lost. If as a mother, I would never feel ratified, oh, my child didn't die in vain. But I
Right.
will say I'm glad that it's a better world for more children.
Yes.
Because if we do keep up this way, we're going to kill all of ourselves off and say, did you do something there or did you not? Because a lot of people are just scared of death, so they're doing whatever it is, scrambling through, when a lot of us have so much and we're just being ungrateful for what we have, and we've been taught colonial style just to gobble up and consume more. And it's not about consuming, it's about using what you have in the best ways that you can to help yourself and others,
Hmm.
because there is no island of self. It's an island of people. It's a community, a global community, one human family.
Right. Any closing thoughts?
Cherish who you have and what you have, and hear that from others and be supportive of that which you fully believe in, and take time to learn more. Let yourself be wrong, because one of the hardest parts about this is people don't want to be wrong. They just want to be justified in whatever it is that they're claiming. They want to feel like they're the good guy, but maybe
Hmm.
you're not the good guy. Maybe you made some bad decisions. And in all of this bowing down to save ourselves, we've set up the foundation for brush fire.
Right.
We've set up the foundation for all of it to burn to the ground.
Yeah.
And you might lose things that you hold so precious, because you think other people are going to take responsibility for that. But in
Hmm.
reality, unless you look them in the eyes, unless you know them, and even then, there's no guarantees. So, you know, honor the process of grieving. Let yourself grieve you, because you're becoming new at any
Hmm.
time. And don't let systems that be dictate what you're thinking or what you think is actually happening, because it's typically much more than you think.
Hmm. Well, thank you, April. Now, I drew you out to have a political conversation, but you usually, most of your other content is of a different tone and a different timbre. So thank you for indulging this and coming into my territory and kind of doing the thing that I like to do. And but where can people get in touch with your wisdom in other formats?
I have a YouTube channel, I have an Instagram page, at Instagram at golden underscore life underscore unlimited underscore LLC. So to look, it's Golden Life Unlimited LLC. And so I'm doing my best to learn the system and buffer myself by saying I'm a corporation, which I am,
Hmm.
um, because in this tricky environment, they're doing whatever they can to defame and isolate people, when we need to come together as a big hui, as a big group, because it's our responsibility to be stewards of the earth, and we're not even being stewards of ourselves,
Right.
and we're letting people who have clearly been sinking the ship for so long manage it. Also, tap into who you are.
Mm.
Even if you come from the most corrupt, land barons, tap into that and say, you know what, that's okay. Even if I was corrupt or evil, I can switch that. I can change that narrative, because ultimately it's the blaming, it's the pointing fingers, is a very childish move. It's somebody else's fault. Well, you know what, it doesn't matter. The blender exploded stuff everywhere. Now it's time to clean it up as a group, and it doesn't
Yes.
matter who did it. Now it's time. Well, it does matter, because we need to change how that system set it up in the first place, but it's time for us to take our responsibility.
Well, yeah, and some of us believe in good old-fashioned accountability. I mean, 1,300 deaths requires blood, in my opinion. So, I mean,
Well,
what?
okay.
Yeah,
I'm actually
but
not I'm not opposed to there being that, because especially if they're pretending like it wasn't and
Right.
then trying to do the same shit all over again,
Well, and
it's
trapping the people in and then preventing trapping the people from getting out and then preventing the aid from getting in. I mean, guilt upon guilt upon guilt upon guilt. I mean, at some point we have to call this mass murder because it is, you know, whatever the particular
okay.
machinations are, to
It's
me.
really hard as the it's like you have two sons, one's Cain, one's Abel,
Right.
and it's like, as much as I don't want to kill you, I can't just, can I just kick you out? And then are you going to be doing the same thing wherever you go?
They seem to. That's the problem. They seem to. Now, this is another place where we get to represent the divine feminine consciousness and the divine male consciousness. Like that's kind of like the nature of the dialectic that we are embodying in this moment. But the grounded perspective, the view from the ground is yes, they're going to keep doing this wherever they go until they're forced to stop.
This actually reminds me of this. It's going to be a metaphor, but when with my ex, we were in Home Depot and there was this mouse caught on a, I don't know why he had to do this. This is just weird. Or maybe it was our old home or something. Because why would he do that if it's Home Depot? But anyway, so there's this mouse caught on the sticky trap
Mm-hmm.
and all of its limbs, and it couldn't get off. And the only
Yes.
justified thing to do it was to kill it. And
Yes.
I couldn't stomach or handle it.
Right.
But I left and I said, I understand. Do what you got to do.
Yeah.
And I
Right.
took it out.
Exactly. It's the nature of neo-fascist propaganda is weaponizing the compassion of the overly compassionate. You know, and not even that's a misnomer. It's not the overly compassionate. Like it's the but when they can use that gaslighting and use that mass digital siloing and that large scale manipulative propaganda to take people's compassion and push them in ways that actually go against colonized people and against people who are oppressed by this structure. At some point you have to say, it's a balance. There's a time and a place for mercy and forgiveness, and there's a time and a place for exacting justice. And I chose the word exacting over the word brutal, but they're really the same thing in some regard. But yeah, it's really both. It's like these things have to be co-equal. And when you see the campaigns against the male ethos, in this generation, you don't see colonizers pushing men down without intentions to commit this type of brutality, and then they go and do it. So it's like we can't have it imbalanced in either direction. We can't have
Right.
it imbalanced against the feminine or against the masculine. We have to recognize that it's co-equal and say,
I
okay,
want you, well, hold on, hold on. Wait just a moment.
yeah,
It's cutting out. Okay, so you can't be against the masculine and the feminine. We have to be. Continue.
co-equal. Yeah,
Okay.
you can't have a world that's all brutality, and you can't have a world that's all
It's
compassion.
it's it's cutting out again, so we'll have to check and make sure that you're understood, because this is a key point, I think, for the survival of the human species, because the earth is literally about to take us out.
Right, right, yeah, and that's what it means. It's like the warrior spirit is valorized for a reason, and we need for the colonized people to step back up into their warrior spirit and draw the line and say no more. That's the whole point. It can't just be endless amounts of compassion. There has to be that confrontation where you draw the line in the sand and you say you've gone far, way too far, and you will not go any farther.
Right. And the willingness to have uncomfortable conversations, the willingness to hear uncomfortable things that
Yeah,
might offend you,
yeah,
so that you can actually get the perspective of more than just yourself. Because quite frankly, we're fed this disillusion that everything is going to be a happy go lucky place, when in reality we still have people being raped, murdered, traumatized actively. And to acknowledge that we're actively being traumatized. Everyone's talking about trauma,
Yes.
but nobody's talking about the major traumas, the
Yes.
governmental traumas, the systemic traumas, and how we actually shift that. Because
Yes.
while I recently did a live Yoni Steam on how to heal while you're being actively traumatized.
Right.
And it's based actually, when I looked back at it, it's based on the Neville Goddard concept of stepping into the actualization through feeling.
Hmm.
But you have to shave off and slough off things that are uncomfortable and wrong,
Right.
right? The part of the brutality of the feminine body, menstruation, right? Our body cramps to remove those things that it no longer needs. It was supposed to sustain life, but it's
Hmm.
not sustaining it, and it's become ex superfluous. So now remove it. And the same
Yes.
thing happens, toxins come out. That's why there's so many issues with reproductive stuff that's happening, because we have so many toxins bombarding us. Our cleansing organ is actually bombarded with toxins, bombarded with things that our bodies don't actually need. Same thing with our gut system. Everybody's having all these gut issues because we're not getting rid of the shit we don't need, and we keep consuming stuff we don't need to.
Right.
So it's time
Yes.
to make a choice. It's time to stand up.
Yes. 100% on all levels, and recognizing these different vectors of attack as you're describing, you know.
It's all about propaganda. Like, what are you consuming?
Right.
What ideas, what self awareness are you consuming?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
is it slowing you down? Did you consume enough of the I'm not enough to do something
Hmm.
that you're no longer doing anything?
Right. Or that I have no right to do something, you know.
Right,
That's
right.
good. Um,
What I found is interesting is people take offense when people say I'm native this or I'm indigenous this. And it's like,
mhm.
because their concern is, well, I come from a culture that imprisoned or, enabled colonialism or took advantage of that system. So I'll just ignore what I am. And when people say what they are, I'm going to feel too uncomfortable to look at the past. And it's like, it's okay to come from uncomfortability, but say, I'm actively making a change.
Yeah.
When you ignore that, that's how you are becoming exactly like your ancestry.
Well, and it's always been that it was a small percentage of every group that was doing the colonization and the oppression. You know, so whether
Right, right.
you're looking at East Asia, whether you're looking at Mesopotamia, whether you're looking at Europe, you know, like I have ancestors that were conquered by the Romans and hunted like dogs. You know, like I have part of what happened in 1910 here in America when they did a mass cultural genocide against holistic healing, is they didn't just come for East Asian modalities, South Asian modalities, Native American modalities, and African modalities. They came after indigenous European modalities as well, because we had brought that culture over here too. And so it's like it's every, you know, the oppressive class is intersectional and the oppressed class is intersectional. And
Right.
that's part of the revelations of the 21st century, is that when you're being foisted upon a reduced concept, you know, like brown versus white, or native versus immigrant, you know, like when these concepts are being foisted upon you to reduce your consciousness, this is conceptual precepts to genocide, just like they did in Rwanda, where they took a people who were a united culture, and they divided them by phenotype and told them that they were two different people,
Mm.
and then they had them kill each other. You know, like we need a much more we need to be much more astute when it comes to the tricks of the genocidaires, and we need to see them when they're in action, not just in hindsight. That's the whole problem.
And we're given all the hints. We're given all of it with the talk of the narcissistic abuse, and we talk
Yes.
of all of these types of gaslighting and so on and so forth. It's to help us recognize that it's in multiple forms. And when it
Right.
happens in one area of life, it happens in multiple areas of life. So I'm actually taking the approach in my company to slow down. And right now I'm focusing on the feminine and want to expand into the masculine and the family, you know, the third energy, and slowing down and letting, because we're so riddled with bombarded of information, but just slowing the mind down enough to start to allow the body to regulate and check in with itself, right? Because people are in a state of fight or flight. And then also to allow to shifts and change, noticing where the tensions are. And epigenetically, you know, scientifically, which is the new God, right?
Hmm.
Scientifically, it actually shifts your epigenetics and what's showing up.
Yes.
And that's what we have to consciously do as a collective. So if
Yes.
something enrages you, it's supposed to enrage you, right? It's supposed to give you that fuel to change your system, not to just sit there and take it. And you don't ever let anyone else sit there and take it, but learning how to regulate your system,
Yes.
learning how to co-regulate with others so that you can actually accomplish a goal, which is building these smaller, more localized community versus this mass overseeing government, which isn't overseeing anything. It's just collectively trying to make itself survive and be bigger.
Yes. And what you've described, that process of shifting one's epigenetics and being still with oneself and having what we might call mindfulness or conscious attention to one's ability. I mean, that's the foundational building blocks of self sovereignty. So that's a lost lesson that must be reclaimed, is that self sovereignty is really a first key step to a more collective sense of sovereignty. You know, like it's sort of like the ability to be in control of one's faculties and not allow a colonizing force to manipulate those same faculties against you, whether they're manipulating you toward self-destruction through overeating or boozing or whatever it is, or if they're manipulating you to attack another colonized group, because they would rather you funnel that anger and that energy towards someone who they mutually see, who they as well see as one of their enemies, than to funnel it against them. You know.
And maybe, you know, thinking about it, because I like to go within and without. Like, I'm far more esoteric and spiritual in my practices and in my channel. So, you know, this fire, these fires that keep happening around the world, these floods of emotion, things that we are
Right.
not letting ourselves be aware of until it's too late.
Yes.
These fires of anger, we have a lot of justified anger overall as a
Yes.
species.
Hmm.
Actually filtering those out and looking at them before they become an external thing, like,
Yes.
you know, the example of the person getting like oppressed at work or underlooked or, you know, whatever it is, taking that rage home and then putting it out on a child, and that child then has to internalize it because they're not allowed to speak about it, and then that becomes a cancerous thing when they're an adult, or maybe they become abusive as an adult because they weren't allowed to express, because that parent put all of that energetics, that negative anger into them, and we are those children,
Yes.
right? We are the ones that are holding on to this stuff. We might have
Hmm.
had times of laughter and light, but we were never allowed to release that, and here we are. We
Yes.
withholding of emotion has created these dry fields that are then ample for quick rage and huge outbursts and things that we cannot take back or undo.
Yes. And I think that, what I meditate upon listening to those words, that, this colonial system cannot survive without intensive compartmentalization, to the level of the micron, to the level.
Hold on, hold on. So these colonial systems cannot survive without
Yeah, intense compartmentalization. So without,
intense compartmentalization. Every time you start talking, it's going off, which means what he's saying is very key. So we've noticed throughout our journey together that when the energies get really, really high and when we're saying something very, very important, sometimes we have tech issues.
whatever may be causing those tech issues. Yeah, sometimes they occur. especially when we're using platforms controlled by enemy territory, shall we say. But yeah, so yeah, we what I was saying is that a colonial system requires compartmentalization. So you're talking about the way in which the psyche itself gets compartmentalized, where the individual cannot be fully present with the full range of emotion. And how from a very yin perspective, as you are giving language to and embodiment to, this then can reflect to us through these novel events, through these externalized events of expressing our inner world through tragedy when we were not present with ourselves in the way that we could be and how we're trained to be compartmentalized like that. And that's the whole thing. I mean, compartmentalization is literally sort of like the entire thing, whether you're looking at within the psyche, within communities, between communities of oppressed people who have different backgrounds and cultural inheritances and that kind of thing. And then even when you look at the structure itself, the technocratic structure itself, it's all about compartmentalization. And so if we choose if we choose holism, let's say, if we choose to be whole as people, and then if we choose to make ourselves whole as communities and coalitions and alliances of oppressed peoples, this is really the only way forward, to save ourselves, our planet. And I am I don't know if you want to call it optimistic or not, but I believe in our ability to overpower this oppressive structure, and I believe that we quite simply must, like that's how I
Well,
see it.
I feel it. I feel it inside of me that we're already one, right? We're already at that space.
Yes,
I'm just trusting and following in line. And
yes,
sometimes I got to get uncomfortable to do that. So be willing to get uncomfortable. You want to get fit, you want to get healthy, you got to get uncomfortable. You can't eat those donuts in the middle of the night. You know what I mean? You got to push yourself on that exercise. You got to go for that little walk. You want to have a better family dynamic, you have to look at the things that aren't healthy in the family and also what is healthy in the family and how to also shift that for the children, right?
right,
And have those uncomfortable conversations. If your child was molested or raped, you need to be able to talk to them about that and also confront a person. We have learned that confrontation is bad, right? In terms of over feminization and the
right,
nice girl feminization, not the dark feminine energy, which is like, cut that shit the fuck off and we're done. And this person goes to the masculine so they can take care of it because I don't get my hands dirty,
yeah,
right? So we actually need to have these uncomfortable conversations. Oh, this governmental system is not working. Okay, well, some of these things are actually okay. Everybody's getting fed. Let's keep that part of it. Everybody needs housing. Why does everyone have housing? Let's fix that shit. And whoever has been stealing and pilfering all these monies to build weapons to fight each other instead of building homes and gardens and community spaces, we're going to go ahead and reallocate that. And guess what? You guys are on timeout until you figure out how to readjust your technological concerns. Because having technology and all this stuff is fun, but if it's not being used to help facilitate our cohesive evolution, then it's useless,
yes,
more or less. So we have to now build from what we've got, and we've got to clear out what never served in the first place.
hmm
And coming from a place of not just altruism, but conscious forethought of the future,
right,
right? Like, yes, I'm going to give you food, but I'm also going to teach you how to grow a garden.
okay,
And it's going to be a garden that's in the whole neighborhood. So everybody has to take some time and learn how these plants work and stuff like that. And
hmm
now everybody can help take this garden. If somebody gets sick, if anything happens, we can still all eat, but
right,
we're not dependent on somebody constantly bringing in that food.
yes. Very, very well said. Well, let's go ahead and close it out. I'm actually going to make this two separate little videos because I think we've got enough material for two different topics. So let's go ahead and repeat your contact stuff. Give us your Instagram, your YouTube, and your website.
Oh, I put off the website for a little bit.
Okay.
because there was no point in having it right now.
Okay.
But I do on my Instagram there is a link tree which has uh, different products and things like that. You can check out different free resources that I offer. I primarily focus on women's health and yoni steaming and changing our genetic structure so that we can actually start resonating and changing others around us as well. So
Right.
my Instagram is at Golden Life Unlimited
Mhm.
LLC. That's golden underscore life underscore unlimited underscore LLC. So you can find me there and any of the talks there. I like to go from silly and sassy to direct and to the point. And it's also very feminine of a channel. So I'm learning to be more direct and imply some of the masculine because in my life, in terms of survival, I had to step into masculine a lot.
Right.
So when I'm able to step into the space of sharing, I end up going like ultra feminine, which can seem a little flighty, but it goes back into being able to receive, right?
Yes.
And I kind of enter into full channel mode, and that's a whole nother thing. But Golden Life Unlimited is also the name of my YouTube channel, unless I change it back to my name. But Golden Life Unlimited.
Excellent. And then okay, that was your YouTube channel, right? You just said
Yes, sir.
okay,
Mhm.
great. Okay, so you gave us our Instagram and YouTube, and we'll go ahead and link these into the description box below. And you can see all my links below as well. If you would like activist coaching, the service for that I do is Global Patriot Mission Coaching. I would love to work with the Hawaiian Sovereignty Movement. So there are organizations that want to tap into me as a resource to assist with that. I'm more than happy to assist. And
I
perhaps we
think
can.
I'll link you. Sorry, I'll link you
Okay.
with a couple people too, just so we can keep the ball rolling on that because there's some real power players, and let's get them
Yeah.
out there.
Yes, happy to just be a non-intrusive brain trust, basically. You know, whatever people want to use me for a sounding board is probably what most people find me useful for in that regard. So, yes. So, thank you so much, April. Excellent talk. Like I said, we went across a whole wide range. So I think I'll break this into two videos: one focusing on Maui and Lahaina, and one focusing on this other sort of tangential topic of epigenetics and you know, changing ourselves from the inside out, and sort of like the more yin side of global change that we're seeking. I think that we've got some really good fodder there. So I deeply appreciate you for all that you do and all that we're able to collaborate upon, and especially for lending your time and lending your voice as a Hawaiian resident, as the mother of a Hawaiian child, to this moment at this very critical time. I appreciate it.
Oh, love you so much. The my closing thought is, you know, I do sweat lodges. I used to do them more, and I'm actually going to get back into them. But it's a Lakota style sweat lodge, and I myself am indigenous by way of South Carolina,
Mhm.
which is a big Cherokee nation. So mixed blood, right? So I have to say that this is about the next 7 generations.
Yes.
And if we even want there to be next 7 generations, because tech cannot survive itself
Right.
because it's in its capacity to continue to learn. All it wants is for us. So we don't need to fight technology. We just need to fight the corruption that's within our systems.
Yes.
And that's because we're riddled with parasites. So
Yes.
if you can start with cleaning your body and cleaning your mind, you're going to start making better decisions and also start teaching by example,
Mm.
being more in harmony with our planet because our body is made of our planet. So
Yes.
I know this got really extrapolated, but knowing that this isn't about you,
Mhm.
it's about what you leave behind, that's going to be the key. Do you need this? Do you need this? Or do you just want it because it makes you feel comfortable in an old paradigm way?
Right. Well said. Well, thank you, April. I think that's the place to leave it. Yeah.
I'll keep going if we don't.
Much love, much love. Stay on the line, yeah. So take care. I'll
Mhm.
in the um
Shit.
yes.
Yeah.